Welcome to Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister, Jen. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to the natural world. In connecting to this planet, we also connect to understanding, compassion, and empathy. How can we see ourselves not as separate or above animals in nature, but a critical and integrated part of an active ecosystem? Through conversations with animal advocates, scientists, conservationists, and many others, we look to inspire a new awareness of how and why we connect to animals and nature in order to repair and restore our relationship to the natural world.
Good morning and welcome back to Kindred.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for welcoming us to Kindred today.
You're so welcome to be welcomed.
I really like this new thing we're going to maybe just implement. Twist. I'm so bored of me. So thanks for that. How are you?
I just was realizing, I hope I didn't sound like a morning DJ, but I am fine. Good morning. I am on assignment, as one of the podcasts I like to listen to talks about, on assignment, which just means not at my house.
That's right. That's right. You are on assignment.
Up in the Cape, and it's lovely. And so I'm, looking at some blue sky, so feeling good.
You're right. Your backdrop is beautiful, so I appreciate you sitting where you are today. It's very lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're all good. We're all good. So, thank you for your welcome today. And just a little jump to some admin before I always forget to promote our actual podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, everyone, at The Kindred Pod. We put a lot of content there that I think is interesting and relevant and beautiful and lovely. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, which means Kat Gaddy, our producer, is pounding it in my head. Please talk to people about following our podcast. And what that means is when you find a new podcast and you go up to the upper right-hand corner, there's a little plus sign. And when you select that plus sign, it turns into a check mark. And that means you're following us. And the reason that's important is, one, then we download to your phone every new episode, which is super convenient. And also that it is helpful that we can, since you're following us, we get to kind of see, get analytics from you guys and see what content you're the most interested in. And then we can do more of that for you. So please follow us. And of course, always rate and review us. If you have an extra 4 seconds, that's also really helpful. So yes, that's the admin for today. But yes, today we are heading east of Reno, Nevada to the Virginia Range, where we are speaking with Tracy Wilson of the American Wild Horse Campaign about the wild Western Mustangs, which I am so excited about. What an incredible little topic that I just didn't know anything about. So we're super excited about that. But I do want to just go back a little bit for a bit of history, sort of just to sort of lay a foundation for this conversation. So in 1971, Congress passed the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act, declaring that, among other things, these animals, quote, enrich the lives of the American people and are an integral part of the natural system of the public lands. So why are we talking to American Wild Horse Campaign today? Because like I said, I knew almost nothing about this beautiful, critical, iconic horse and its relationship and history to the American Western landscape. And it seems like we've forgotten about these animals. So also because inhumane practices are being used by the U.S. government, more specifically the branch, the United States Department of the Interior, in the management process of these horses and burros. So thus AWHC and I will give you a little bio on them, which I pulled from their website. The American Wild Horse Campaign is a nonprofit organization fighting to ensure the future of America's iconic wild horses and burros and the Western public lands where they roam. We work to reform the cruel and costly federal wild horse and burro roundup program and replace it with humane management that keeps wild horses and burros wild, protected, and free. AWHC manages the largest humane fertility control program for wild, free roaming horses in the world. So they have quite a task ahead of them, and it's a complex, layered, very sensitive campaign that they're undertaking for all the reasons. And the motto for AWHC is "There is a better way." And we agree, don't we, after talking with Tracy?
Yes.
Yeah, so we wanted to share this story with you because we believe we should be held to a standard of care and compassion and use this great human power we hold to lessen the suffering of animals rather than contribute to it, right? I mean, we've talked about that before.
Yes. Yeah, right, exactly. And yeah, there's no reason not to.
Right, exactly. Just be keeping accountability for ourselves.
Yes.
And I think the first step in doing this, I think, is becoming aware of an issue and understanding it. So yes, we contacted Tracy Wilson, who is the Nevada State Director for AWHC, to walk us through the challenges of wild Mustangs and how we got them into this position and how we can help. So a little bit about Tracy. She actually started out in a career as a licensed massage therapist and certified personal trainer, which I'm sure helps with all her horse riding and wrangling. Right. But when she started volunteering at AWHC in her spare time, she was working with a team collecting data in wild horse identification, and she said that was it. She was 100% hooked, and end of her previous life, and on to.
I love how people find their place where their life takes a course, and then boom. Haven't we talked to more people that happens to, and then all of a sudden now I'm studying wolves or.
That's right.
Humpback whales, or it's just so funny how that happens. Yeah,
that's exactly right. It's a great way to find your passion career. So that was the beginning of her story with AWHC, and like I said, she's now the state director in Nevada on the Virginia range. So let's trot on over, giddy up over.
Like that.
Yeah. Did you like that? I mean, I've only thought about that for like 4 days if I was going to say that or not. But yeah, let's go talk to Tracy Wilson, and thanks for being here. See you at the takeaway. Tracy, welcome to Kindred. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I am Tracy Wilson, and I am the Nevada State Director for the American Wild Horse Campaign.
Okay, so I'd just like to set the scene a little bit. I just want you to talk to us about the specific breed of horse we're talking about today, and describe for us the location and type of landscape that the horses we're talking about exist on.
Yeah, so currently, we have wild horses and burros on our public lands in 10 Western states: Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, and Wyoming. Nevada has about the most wild horses than any of those other states.
Okay.
It covers a big variety of landscapes, but most of the horses and burros are really well suited for the particularly arid landscapes that you find in the West, especially Nevada, Utah. But they also inhabit some mountainous terrain with significant tree cover, so they're pretty adaptable to their terrain. The Mustangs that we see out there are basically a native reintroduced species. Okay. Horses evolved here in North America, and they crossed the Bering Land Bridge and then went locally extinct on the North American continent. And then they were reintroduced when the Spanish arrived in the Americas and brought horses back with them.
Okay.
So it's, there's you hear a lot of debate. It's like, are they wild? Are they feral? Are they native? Are they non-native? Are they invasive? And they are actually, and that's all been proven through recent archaeological findings that they are a reintroduced native species.
Okay, interesting. So this is the Virginia Range in Nevada where we are, like Clark Mountain area, right?
The Virginia Range is actually where our organization has the largest wild horse fertility control program in the world.
Okay.
That's just one range of many in Nevada, but that is our cornerstone project, trying to prove that there is a better way to manage horses in their habitat through fertility control, and that it can be done on a larger scale than we've seen done in other areas in the past.
Yeah. Okay. And we're like east of Reno, where we're kind of focusing on today, elevation 6,500 feet. And like you're saying, like rocky, scrubby, like high desert kind of area. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of high desert area. There's some, pinyon pine cover in some high areas, and then open deserty areas.
So just to kind of dig in, I was thinking about this whole conversation, and I'm a lifelong horse lover. Like, I had a best friend as a pony growing up. My sister will remember, and I've ridden as an adult and just always thought horses were just super beautiful, and just, it's incredible. They're incredible in the connection that we can have with each other. And they've just been, like you were saying, a critical part of the landscape and of cultures around the world. And here in North America, obviously, has a long history of humans and horses. So, what I find surprising is how little I know about wild horses in this country, and how in a society that admires and loves horses as much as we do, we know so little about the state of the American wild horse. And, after doing some research on answering some of my questions, I was alarmed at the issues I found facing Mustangs today. And then I came across your organization. So tell us a little bit about American Wild Horse Campaign and how this organization came about.
Sure. So currently we're the nation's leading wild horse and burro advocacy organization, but we were formed in 2004 as a campaign under a wild horse sanctuary, but then grew out onto our own as our own nonprofit. And so what we do is sort of a multi-pronged approach. We push for legislation on Capitol Hill. We have a legal team to combat bad policies. We, like I said, we operate the world's largest wild horse fertility control program right here on the Virginia Range. We provide funds to rescue organizations in need. And we ensure that what we aim to do is ensure that the American public does know the plight of the wild horse, like you were just talking about. Like, that's one of our main goals, is to actually educate the American public about the wild horse and the issues that they face.
So that's my next question. So talk to us about, what are the major challenges that the Mustangs are facing today?
So today, there's a lot of government mismanagement of wild horses and burros. The government's using brutal helicopter chases to round up and capture thousands of animals each year. They took 20,000 horses, wild horses and burros out of the wild last year.
Wow.
And those are all going, what doesn't get adopted, only so many horses can be adopted. There's only so many homes out there. And so what doesn't get adopted goes into long-term holding. Over the life of a single horse, that's about $48,000 per horse.
Yeah. Wow.
And, you start adding that up with the number of horses that they're bringing in. This is millions of dollars of cost to the taxpayer that we really feel can be managed a better way.
Right.
Now,
go ahead, Jenny.
I just have a question. Is this just like wild horses in the West is the problem? Because like the only wild horses I know about are like in Chincoteague, which everyone's like, oh, wild horses, they're so cool.
Right.
And people go there to see them and they're like celebrated. So, but there's no ranches there. So I guess maybe that's the issue.
It is different because of that. And they are managed there.
Okay.
Assateague is managed. Those little pockets along the East Coast, most of those have management programs in place. including PZP. You know, acetique is managed with PZP.
Okay, I was going to say, have you used some of what they do? Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so what we really sought to do, because that's a smaller area,
way smaller. Yeah.
So what we really, and so it's well proven there. I mean, it's over 35 years of science backing the PZP fertility control, but what we really sought is to fill that gap to show that it can be used in a larger scale.
I was thinking about the Chincoteague ponies or horses as well, so I'm glad you brought that up. But, you know, and I've seen some video of these helicopter chase roundups, and they are really terrifying and they're really brutal. And just knowing horses, you know, they're prey animals, right? And you and I, Tracy, had talked about, you know, a plastic bag is a potential dinosaur. I mean, these things are horses. This is truly terrifying. It's life and death for them. And the injuries that occur during these roundups are very difficult to watch. And, you know, so you had mentioned earlier that, you know, the American Wild Horse Campaign motto is "there is a better way," right? So what are your goals for the horses? Like what, and you were talking about legislation or laws earlier, like what needs to change and what programs do you have in place to support these animals?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things, and I want to back up a minute because we're talking about these roundups, and the National Academy of Sciences did a report some years back. The study was actually funded by the BLM. They just didn't like the answers that came out of it. And they basically said these roundups actually cause something called compensatory reproduction. So the horses actually reproduce at a higher rate to try to make up for that loss of genetics, the genetic pool.
Wow.
So it actually perpetuates the problem they're trying to solve.
Wow.
Nature adapts. I mean, this is what.
Yeah, it is absolutely nature adapts. So one of the things, you know, obviously we'd like to see is a slowing of those removals, an adjustment of what they call the appropriate management level, or the AML. We'd like to see those reassessed. You know, they're using decades old AMLs, and some of them are really below a genetic viability number. You know, if you have an AML of 25 horses, that is not genetically viable. So you're always going to be over AML. Those horses are always going to reproduce to try to broaden that pool.
Interesting.
We'd like to see a reintroduction of apex predators. So one of the things you'll hear a lot is, oh, wild horses don't have any natural predators. They do have natural predators, but those primarily mountain lions, some wolves, but when you remove the mountain lions in the interest of the livestock that is there, it's like all wildlife, right? Once a human interferes, there's a trickle down effect. There's a domino effect that affects all the other species.
Right.
The reintroducing apex predators starts to get back into natural population control. Now, can that be 100% in a limited space? Maybe not, but it's certainly going to slow that population growth rate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so funny that as humans, we think we can just do something like that and it wouldn't have any ramifications. Like we'll just take those out and that'll solve our problem. Like
that'll protect the cows and the sheep and but all the rest get affected. The deer, all of it. It's not just the horses, right?
Well, and this like echoes into other things, Jen. Of course, like we've talked about, like with other guests on, it's like, you know, it's the whole wolf conversation, right? Which we won't go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, no, continue.
It is the whole wolf conversation. And we're now seeing when those are reintroduced that the ecosystem starts to rebalance.
Yeah.
So we'd also like to see a fair share of the resources for the horses and burros within their habitat by reducing or eliminating livestock grazing in those habitats. And we can talk about those numbers, but it's pretty startling. It's not as bleak as people believe that wild horses are overrunning public lands. That's not actually the case. Mm-hmm. We'd like to see, a reallocation of the resources aimed more at fertility control, about managing the population in the wild rather than removals, and water developments, reseeding projects, climate change, 5, all those have had a role in what our public lands look like. And we need to address those things, not just pull horses off. There's other things that need to be addressed as well. And then, of course, we would like to see a strengthening of the 1971 Act that originally put protections in place that has been watered down over the decades.
Yeah, right. And, just jumping back, actually, this makes me think of, again, like talking about legislation. And you were talking about, people can adopt these animals but what legislation is in place that isn't working right now?
Well, currently we have the adoption incentive program, and that is put out by the government to help get some of these horses adopted. Well-meaning for sure. Let's incentivize people to adopt the horses and put some time into these horses. But what has ultimately happened is there are people out there taking advantage of the system. The system allows an individual to adopt up to 4 horses. They get paid $1,000 at the end of a year. I think it's $500 up front and $500 at the end of the year, or maybe it's $1,000 at the end of the year now. Maybe they changed that. But ultimately, you're talking about ranching families that have the space to take these horses, put them out in a fenced area for a year, ignore them. Years up, they collect their title, collect the money, and then they can send them to the auction where they get purchased for slaughter.
No way. Wow, really?
So our investigative team has been really researching this for a couple of years now, and they put out a report, and they've identified 24 groups of related individuals. So families, each person adopting 4 horses and doing this all at the same address. And then they flip these animals to the kill pens.
Wow.
And these groups can net up to $30,000 from incentive payments.
They're totally playing the system because they still kill them. So
right.
So it's costing twice, right?
Right. Right. So this is taxpayer money going to pay these people.
Right. Yeah.
And they're making money off of it. Our team actually identified a group, like one of the worst so far, that was 12 adopting rounds of AIP animals. So they brought in $82,000 of taxpayer funds doing this. Just this one group.
And this is where this is a very sensitive subject. And this is where, but the things of these loopholes that are created within legislation, I think it's really important for our listeners to hear this, to understand what you're working with and against. And, ultimately what the horses are working with and against, like you're saying, climate change, fire, these loopholes, lack of space, lack of funds, the list goes on, and it seems like it's a really brutal cycle for them. And and then that was going to be my next question, just talking about the lack of apex predators, right? And on the landscape, it's implementing new programs. Can you get mountain lions and wolves back on the landscape? But that's a whole other can of worms and a whole other conversation that is difficult for people to accept on their private land, right? But it's the whole thing of, the impact that this has on the wild horse population, and therefore the health and maintenance of the landscape itself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And really, we're talking about putting apex predators back into the public lands where they were in the beginning. I'm not asking somebody's private land, can we put a mountain lion on your land?
In your backyard, please.
But to be fair, the Virginia range is mostly private land, and we have a healthy population of mountains. Our full mortality rate is 50% due to predation. For the most part, It's due to predation. So that shows that in a healthy landscape with those predators present, and there's some studies that came out that are fascinating, and I know that's another conversation, but there are some mountain lions who specialize, they collared them and tracked their kills, and they actually specialize in horse. Wow. And when it's a female, she then teaches her kittens the same hunting skills.
That is incredible. And of course,
and some specialize in mule deer, and that's right. Just but some have developed into horse specialists, and it's been those studies have been fascinating to read.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. So, looking at your website, it's a beautiful website. You've got these stunning photos of these gorgeous animals. So just sort of like shifting gears a little bit, tell us about the life of a wild horse and their herds. I mean, how do they connect to each other? How do they coexist with each other and the landscape around them? Like, take us into the nuances of what we're actually talking about, the life of a horse.
This is my favorite part. Yeah. This is the good stuff. Yeah. So they are, they're so fun just to observe them. I feel so blessed to live in a place that I can literally walk out my back door and go observe horses in the wild. They're basically the two most important things are family and freedom, right? They're fight or flight. So staying free, survival, and their family bands. They live in these complex, dynamic social structures. So there's a band is made up of, and it could be anywhere, like the smallest is 2, a stallion's just acquired his first mare, but on average, you're going to see 5 to 12 animals in a band. And it's going to consist of a band stallion. He's going to be the lead stallion. He's the protector and the breeder. That's his job. He's got 2 jobs, protect and breed.
Right.
And then there's a lead mare. And this is what I find fascinating. Everyone's like, oh, the stallion's in charge. No. The mare's in charge.
Isn't that always kind of how it actually turns out too? It's like,
they've already got this figured out. The mare decides when it's time to go to water, when it's time to move to a different area to graze, who she likes, who she doesn't. And then they have the other mares and their offspring. And so their structures are really interesting. The mares, the babies that are born into a wild band, the mares, the aunties help discipline that baby too, not just the mom, aunties to help as well. You'll see mom wander off and the auntie will shoo the baby back to mom, and they get a little too independent. Auntie will go claim them and be like, no, get back to your mom. And then these are my favorites. When the males reach sexual maturity, they generally get kicked out of their band because the band stallion doesn't want competition from his own son. And they honestly, when left alone, you'll hear, oh, they're interbred. They don't interbreed. This is how they handle it. A stallion will let another stallion breed his mares, his daughters, especially, but they'll kick the boys out. And they end up forming these bachelor bands. They are absolutely the clowns of the range. They're so fun to watch. They spend their time, and you'll see them and you'll think, oh my gosh, look at that fight. But they're really just sparring, and they'll be up on their hind feet and they're biting at each other's legs, and this goes on and on and on. And then they suddenly just stop and walk off and graze together. I mean, they're just characters. They're so fun. I love watching bachelor bands. I could just sit on a rock somewhere and watch them for hours. They're so entertaining. And, they're really fascinating. They don't, you'll also hear a lot like, oh, they're ruining the water sources. Horses go into water, drink, and go out. They have to range to eat. So they'll go up to 20 miles a day to find food and water. And it's really, cattle will actually congregate in riparian areas. I did a flyover of the range, and we went over this big pond, and there were cows laying all around it. The horses were over the next ridge, They weren't even anywhere near the water.
Right.
And another little fascinating fact is that the wild horses don't digest the seeds of the plants they eat. So when they poop, they're planting that seed with its own fertilizer packet. Right. so they can actually spread that forage around.
Interesting.
Yes.
But I'll tell you a fun little story about a sad but fun story about a horse family on our range. There was a mare that was sadly hit and killed by a vehicle. She had a very young foal, and we went down to assess that the mare had actually died, and the stallion saw us and he came charging. I mean, I've never been charged by a stallion, but we were like, oh man, flying up the hill to get away. And we watched, and we were very concerned that this baby was far too young to survive without a mom. So we were going to remove the baby to save it.
Yeah.
And so our rescue team, which I was part of, went out, and we really manage our energy around the wild horses. We were very quietly, sort of following the band. And over the period of about 2 hours, another mare in the band who had her own young foal started to let this baby nurse.
Oh, wow.
So this was the next day. And we, as we watched, we saw that she was going to take on this baby, and we ended up leaving the baby there, and she ended up raising both those babies, and they're both still out there.
Wow.
But it was just, the family bond was so strong, and that stallion was so protective. He was not going to let us near to take that baby, and we were concerned that it wouldn't survive. But then that mare stepped in and started allowing that baby to nurse alongside her own.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it just reminds me again, it reminds me actually so much of how wolf packs operate. And, they're dependent, just their interaction. And I'm sure you have hours of observation, and you get to see all the little things that add up to these bands. I love that, like the boy bands and everything. how much they aren't just these dumb massive animals with little tiny brains. I mean, they have intricate, nuanced relationships with each other.
Yeah, a social structure that's obviously for their survival.
That's right. And also the sort of, I do love, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, the reciprocal relationship they have with the landscape they live on. I love that idea, and people love horse manure for their gardens. Everyone loves horse manure. It's a fertilizer, right? But when you were talking about how because horses don't digest seeds, they're then fertilizing the land that they're sustaining on as well. And the difference between a cow hoof and a horse hoof, and the way that you and I had talked about before, cows root out the grass and horses cut the grass. So it's they have this beautiful reciprocal relationship with the landscape.
Yeah. And there's a really interesting study, fairly recent, by a guy named Eric Lundgren. And this is about burros specifically, but these are serious desert landscapes where the burros dig wells, is what they call it. They dig and dig and dig and create these, because you get these thickets of where the water is, and it's really too thick for the animals to access. And by their digging, they create these pools of water there that not only benefits them, but the reptiles, the birds, the small mammals. It creates this entire new ecosystem of other animals due to these little pools that they've dug for water sourcing.
Wow.
It is really fascinating. He also found that those thickets then are allowing cover for the mountain lions, and those burrows are very heavily predated by those mountain lions. So that's back to that issue.
Yeah. And again, just that Mother Nature has everything, intertwined just as it's meant to be. So these burrows they can probably smell where water is, I bet, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so they go and they smell out the water, and they dig a hole, and then they drink, and everyone gets to benefit from that.
Right.
Well, and because they were there, now they might not be, like you were saying, they might not be native anymore because they were, they did go extinct, but they are supposed to be there. And so it works when they're there.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. That's what I think that's what humans, I think, need to understand a little bit more. This is when we get out of the way and let these things work themselves out, but then they work. But if you take one key element out, then they don't work, and then you have to do the fertility management like you were talking about. And I'm real curious to hear about that.
Sure. So we use a product called PZP. It's made at the Science and Conservation Center in Billings, Montana, at the Montana Zoo. This product, basically what it does, and it's such a tiny dose, the entire dose with the PZP dose and the adjuvant is 1 cc. Goes into a dart. It's fired with an air-powered rifle into the big, hip muscles of the horse. That's always where we dart. And basically what happens is it's an immunocontraceptive. So it stimulates the mare's immune system. And I'm going to keep it simple. It basically alters the molecular structure on the outside of the egg so that the sperm can't penetrate.
Oh,
So it's non-hormonal. It doesn't change the hormones. You're not removing hormone producing organs. So those natural behaviors are preserved, but it does prevent pregnancy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that they'll get a primer and a booster within 2 to 6 weeks, and then a yearly booster after that to maintain. And it is reversible. So if we say, okay, this mare should have a baby now, we can take her off, allow her to have one full, and put her back on.
That's brilliant. Whoever came up with that, that seems like a really, really clever way to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's actually, and not everybody loves this, but it's made from a pig protein, from a protein from a pig ovary. They use it in a lot of mammals in sanctuaries, zoos, reserves. They use them in elephants in reserves in Africa. We actually are partnering with the University of Pretoria to analyze our data for peer publishing. But they have a lot of experience with the preserves with the elephants, using it there.
Interesting. So the one other thing I wanted to delve into a little bit more was just sort of like, if you could touch again on the history of, like Jen, you were just talking about, just maybe like, tell us a little bit more about like, so when were these horses here and when were they not here? And then the Spanish came and the whatever, like can you give us a little more in detail history of that?
I'm going to see if I can go off memory here. So when the original horse, however many hundreds of thousands of millions years ago, was a little tiny, small, like the size of a small dog.
Right.
And then through evolution, developed the grazing teeth, the longer neck. It actually had a humped back in the early stages, and then it went into the back that we see today. So it developed into this grazing animal in the plains. That's when they could cross the Bering Land Bridge.
Right.
Then, it's still up for debate. What happened that they went extinct here? Was it a natural disaster? Was it ice age? What caused them to completely leave the area? But then when that land bridge disappeared, they couldn't come back. Mm-hmm. So then domestication started in Europe and Asia. And then when the Spanish came back to North America, or came into North America, not back, they brought with them the horse. So then the domestication of the horse obviously was used for transportation, for, moving things around the country, and how we developed the West. They came over in wagon trains on horseback. And then eventually, grazing took over, bringing the cows, the cattle, all the landscape. Well, then you get the invention of the motor vehicle, and the horse is less needed.
Right.
So a lot of those horses then became what is now today's wild horse.
Okay.
So when you asked about breed earlier, I sort of evaded that, but that's why, because it depends on the breeds. You will find some of those Spanish genes if you do genetic testing on these horses, but you'll also find what ranchers did is that these horses were hardy. Look at where they survived. So they could create a better ranch stock by breeding their domestics or their ranch horses with the wilds to keep this strong genetic horse that could handle this rough environment, and they created better ranch stock with them.
Interesting, because I had always thought that long before the Western world hit this continent, that Native Americans were riding around on horses. So is that not true?
It is. It is. There is a lot of Native American telling that they had horses. So that's still an area up for debate, that they had horses before reintroduced by the Western push.
Okay.
I've been reading a lot about that lately, like where they're saying, Lewis and Clark came and saw Native Americans on horseback. So, that timetable is still really, we're still in the process of learning that history.
Yeah, well, same with lots of history. This country needs to get a lot of history updates. So my last question really for you is, we're asking all of our guests this, and it's, why do you think this specific conversation about the state of wild horses is important? Like, how does this better connect us humans to to animals and to nature. And from your perspective, like what new perspectives or awarenesses can we gain?
I think, when people ask me why this is important, I mean, this, like we just talked about with the history, this is animal. We truly built the West on this animal. I think to disregard that history and just say remove them all is, I mean, as we talked about, just pulling an animal out of the ecosystem is unfair to begin with. But I think these are sentient beings in, like we talked about, dynamic social structures. I think that they deserve the benefit of being protected and managed in a humane way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so true. And I love that you use that word sentient and deserve. They were here, before us, so many animals. We're one of the last species to kind of be on the block. And I love that. We hear that from a lot of people, that the animals they study and interact with are sentient. And, it's just so great to hear, just touching the top of the iceberg of this conversation. And I so appreciate you taking the time to sort of walk us through this and just sort of give us an insight into what's going on. And again, like, I just never knew anything about this subject. And being a horse lover, it's just so important to know what's going on in our own sort of backyards. And, we really appreciate this conversation. And so how can we support American Wild Horse Campaign?
You can follow us on social media at Free Wild Horses on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Like I said earlier, our goal is to really educate. So we're always trying to put out information that people can learn more about the issues, about the horses themselves. Here on the Virginia Range, we have a newsletter called the Pinto Post, and we highlight a horse or a horse family every month. We highlight our volunteers that make this program work. It's really to try to show that there is a better way to manage them. And then you can also join our mailing list at AmericanWildHorseCampaign.org/join. And that, again, you get on the email list and some informational stuff comes out, that type of thing. I just encourage people to, we have a resource page and it's got lots of different articles listed, books to read, that kind of thing, that if people really want to learn more about this issue, it's a really good resource.
Right, that's fantastic. And, I love your motto, because it really does sort of translate into all of these conversations that we're having, that there is a better way. And we're so grateful to people like you who, it's like an emotional thing, isn't it? To, the people like you who dedicate their lives to finding that better way and just never giving up and coming back to the table again and again to have these conversations that are really, really hard. Everyone's got a very strong perspective, but you're doing it for the good of these beautiful animals. And we're just so grateful for what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see the world put us out of business where we don't need to do this anymore, right? Yeah. That would be the ultimate goal.
Exactly.
Yeah. But we're a little ways off for that. So for now, we keep fighting for the better way.
Yep. Today, you keep finding the better way. So Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, really. Thank you for having us and talking about the issues. Much appreciated.
Really good.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Takeaway. As always, thank you so much to Tracy Wilson and AWHC for speaking with us today. Again, just a conversation that, lots of things. We learned a lot. And I think one of the overall sort of takeaways for me that we've talked about before, but not for a long time, is that this conversation very much reminds me of, why should we care about the issue that, with these horses? Like, why is it important? And I think, we asked her that question and she said, well, because they're sentient and because they deserve it. And I think, I think there's a movement to move away from seeing animals and nature as objective and it's to them and us, and using terms like sentient beings, and because they exist, they are as legitimate as we are.
Yeah.
What are we supposed to do with this now? And I think it sort of took me down this path. It's less about, okay, yes, donate to them if you can. $1, $20, $1,000. Absolutely, money is king, right? Cash is king, like they say. But there's also the idea that if we all really could get just a teeny bit more integrated into the ecosystems in our backyards, right? Like, what can we do to care about where we are? And because a lot of people are going to say, well, what can I do to help wild horses outside of Reno, right? And that's true. Like, I actually can't physically help them, but what I can do is I can donate. I can also be aware of, again, like legislation, right? How important and critical it is to be aware on a local level what is happening with legislation, because a lot of what Tracy was talking about was legislation, right? I mean,
yes, yeah, right, and that's exactly right. It can be much more practical. Also, I think on the sort of more esoteric side, I think you can't care about something that you don't know about.
Right.
You can't care about something that you don't understand. Like, that's what, especially this season, I would say, every conversation we have had, it's just like, oh, I had no idea. Like, I just keep finding myself having that same thought. Like, I had no idea. And if we all have no idea, except for the Tracys, how is it going to change? We have to know, and knowledge is power, So I think it's both are true, but I do think that just informing ourselves, as we know across the board in lots of ways in the last few years, we've been called to inform ourselves in ways that we haven't been held to account before, especially as, comfy, privileged, a lot of times white people who live far away from these problems and issues. It's easy to not know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And there's so much to know, right? There's
That's exactly right.
One bazillion trillion species out there. But your point about, knowledge and just knowing, and our brains and our hearts are actually big enough to take on more knowledge, to take on more understanding. And I agree with you 100%. I think what you're saying is really, that's sort of the crux of this. And I think, as much as, and it's not my job, isn't necessarily, at least not yet, to like Tracy she found her calling. She was volunteering and she said, oh, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, the end.
Right.
And I feel like it's our job to create this platform for her voice.
And that's where I think the bright and brilliant minds of the current age are going to help us too. It's like, we can reimagine these things and do these things that we've always done this way differently. Just because we've always done them doesn't mean they're good, doesn't mean they're, like you said, it's a really expensive way. It might be, quote unquote, the easiest way, but it's not. Is it actually the best way? And so that's what I love, coming back to their motto, is just like, oh yeah, there is a better way. Okay.
Well, I actually want to end with that. You use the word reimagine, and that actually makes me, so much of this, can we not reimagine a new way? Because we do tend to do things. This is the way we do them, and that's the way we're going to continue to do them, and until something like AWHC and Tracy comes through and says, no, there's a better way. So yeah, the reimagining of that, I think that's a really good term. And I think that's sort of embodies this whole conversation. So thanks again to Tracy for her time, her passion, and her her love of horses, which we can relate to completely.
Yeah.
And you can follow American Wild Horse Campaign on Instagram at Free Wild Horses, and their website is AmericanWildHorseCampaign.org. You can also follow us on Instagram, and which is the Kindred Pod, and you can check out our website for all of the links to the show notes and to this episode at kindredpodcast.co. So yeah, do all those things, and look at their website actually, because I mean, these horses, talk about sexy. My gosh, these horses are like, hey girl, hey Italian, like they are so stunningly beautiful. And I think like that's what's the power of photography and imagery in conservation is really a critical part, because they're just so beautiful. And go check out some boy bands. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us again, and
thank you.
We'll see you next time. Lots of love. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find links to our socials, Patreon page, and show notes.